Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bacon, I make plans for 7:45, and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Well, thank you, Andre Lamar, for that great opening, and welcome to everyone who is joining us tonight. And I will say this, it's going to be like a cage match tonight. We've got the bull in the stall. We're at the rodeo, and I tell you, it's bucking. We're looking to get out and get it going because there's a lot of great information, a lot of great stories that are going to be shared tonight. And if you want to know where we are, where we're going, and where we've come from when it comes to electronics, as I said, you couldn't ask for a better panel to do that. Jim's going to be joining us to take us down a trip down memory lane. Lawrence is going to explain to us the importance of electronics to someone who has a vision disability. And of course, Jay is going to speak to us weekend warriors, the average angler. And Dave Chong's going to wrap it all up and give us an update on where electronics are right now and where they're going to go. So it's going to be a lot of great information shared tonight, and we're going to get right to it as quick as we can. A couple announcements I do have to make. One of which is how we all doing tonight. I see Rob's with us. Tony's in the house. How you doing, Trisha? Steve Shaw, yeah, baby. Look at all our legacy members. Bill's in the house. Brad Frost. Happy time cooking. Happy time cooking. I believe it is, Brad. Forgive me if I got that wrong. Rocky Ellison, my friend. You're going to want to stay tuned tomorrow for a Trout Tuesday feature that is going to speak exactly to the question that you posed our CFN community, and your answer will be given tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Sean Forci, how you doing, my friend? Tom, hi. There we are. Impact Baits. Yeah, baby. Nice to see everybody here. Hello from Sudbury. Brian, good to see you as well. As I said, just a couple of announcements before we get started. First and foremost, we are talking about electronics. And there's a certain somebody that has brought this to a head. And we saw an article that was shared on the Toronto Ambassador Urban Anglers page, TUFA. And I want to thank Dave for posting that, because we shared it to our page and it created a lot of conversation and engagement. It was actually really cool. So I thought, you know what, let's talk about it from a different angle and have certain people talk about it that have had a vested interest in it, have a little bit long in the tooth, have certainly seen how it was. And then, of course, some Dave Chong who sees how it is now. But what I want to do first is I'm going to play you a video to sort of set the stage of what it is that we're talking about. And this was from Randy Blockett and his page, his YouTube page, because I didn't get permission to use it. So I'm going to make sure that I plug his YouTube page as best I can. It's Intuitive Angling with Randy Blockett. And if you don't know, Randy is an FLW pro. very well, very well spoken. He is outspoken about this issue when it comes to electronics, and let us set the stage with what I would consider is a very valid rant. Take it away, Randy.
Yes, I just got done reading a bunch of the stuff about the northern swing of tournaments up in St. Lawrence River, Lake Erie, that type of stuff, the guys that have been up there fishing, and about all these guys that are doing good, with all the electronics. They've got, they've got all the, the 360, they've got the live scopes, they've got the pan optics, and now they're using these AquaView cameras that you can actually look down there and see the bass in. And I just want to say that this is getting absolutely ridiculous. Like I said, it has gotten to the point where a lot of these anglers out there that go up, and when it's set up for this offshore deep water fishing, particularly in clear water, a lot of these anglers out there, they've got $20,000 plus worth of electronics on their boat. And now to the point where they can drop a dang camera down and see bass swimming down there. Is that what we want? Is that really what we want in the sport? Is that what we want bass fishing to turn into, to where you just drop a camera down and you can see what's down there, and no mystery, there's no magic behind it, you just drop a dang camera down there and see the fish? To me, that is the biggest insult, it's the biggest outrage to what's going on in our sport that I can even think of.
So again, valid point. Totally understand his stance. Totally understand his rant. Coming from 40 plus years of bass fishing, I can certainly understand, how it's hard for older anglers maybe to change and get up with the times. But is it really something that we want to? Is it a road we want to go down? Is cameras underwater the road that and path that we want to take? I don't know. But I do know we have at least 4 gentlemen that are going to weigh into this heavily, and they're going to give you their opinions. They're going to give you their insight, and I can't wait to get going on that. But as I said, a couple of announcements. Big shout out to Christina. How you doing? Gortraski's in the house. Ray Dupont. Nice to see you, my friend. Eric is here. Laura, how you doing? Lady of Walleye Wednesday. Rob Nickerson, his videos are great, and he's teamed up. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's key, Rob, is he has teamed up with Johnny to sort of teach him how important or how easy it is to start to learn some of this newer technology. So you're 100% right. Great point. Couple of announcements. Tuesday, tomorrow, Mike and I will be giving some updates on the CFN fish off. And as I said, unfortunately with COVID, the numbers aren't going the right way. But as it is right now, of course, it's on hold. It's not even starting yet, but we've given a tentative date of May long weekend, and we're hoping, fingers crossed, legs, toes, and everything else that you can cross, that we're going to be able to start May long weekend. But as it is right now, unfortunately, the numbers aren't going where we want. So we might have some ideas and some new proposals for change. One proposal of change that I want to thank Cliff Moores out on the West Coast for bringing to our attention. We may have to rethink how we're going to be targeting saltwater species, because some species out there have been heavily targeted already and are kind of in danger. I don't want to say they're on the endangered list by any means, but their numbers are concerning. And when a guide and charter captain like Cliff Moores and provincial ambassador speaks out to you and says, hey, Scotty, you might want to rethink this, we listen. And we listen to all of you. And it's important that we do, because we want to get it right. So, Cliff, I want to really thank you for reaching out to us. We're going to be discussing it more tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Mike and I, as I said, we're going to be talking CFN fish off, some updates, and some proposals for change. So tune in tomorrow to that on the CFN fish off page. Wednesday, speaking of Cliff, of course, he's going to be doing his BC Fishing Network podcast. Hey, guys, if you get a chance, I know it's a little bit late out this way to tune in. It is at 10:30 Eastern time, but Cliff's doing a great job with his team, getting some great representatives and mentors from our industry, talking tackle, talking tips, talking techniques. So as I said, I really invite you to tune in on Wednesdays at the BC Fishing Network podcast page. Cliff and the boys will be putting on yet another great show this coming week. So stay tuned to that. Now, Thursday is really exciting. So our first TNT Thursday was last Thursday, and Braden is going to be joining us later on to do the giveaway for that first inaugural show. We're going to be doing it again this Thursday, and I'm really excited. And I want you guys to just pay attention for 2 seconds because this is really cool. So we are going to open the show up with the one and only Jim McLAUGHLIN, who's going to be telling, teaching, and giving us all kinds of his, I don't want to say secrets of the trade, but certainly some of the things that he's learned over the years when it comes to tying jigs. And anybody in Ontario, if not Canada for that matter, knows how good of a tyer Jim is. Not just a great bass angler, not just a great speaker and storyteller, but man, he can tie a jig or two. And we want to promote his product in light of what we're doing at TNT Thursdays. And we're honored to have Jim with us on Thursday to do that. So stay tuned for that. And we also have Sparkus Fisher. And I'll tell you, you talk about a generous guy, given the situation of COVID right now. I can't say enough about Sparkus Fisher. He's going to be coming on and talking about his guide company that he has been doing. And I want to say he's into his 3rd year, and I might be wrong, but I think he's into his 3rd year. He usually typically guides on Lake St. Clair and the Detroit River for walleye and bass. But he's going to be coming on and talking about what he's learned, what he knows, some of the tips, tricks, and techniques that he has gathered either from himself, time on the water, or maybe some of his clients have taught him a thing or two. But at the end of all that, it's going to include a giveaway, and it's going to be a day out on the water with the one and only Sparkus. So if you're in the Ontario area or happen to be in the Ontario area once COVID lifts, we'd love to be able to offer this incredible giveaway. I think it's a great spin that Sparkus has put on this. The winner must bring a kid under the age of 18. So if you are chosen, you must bring a child under the age of 18 to accompany you on Sparkus's boat out either on Lake St. Clair or the Detroit River, depending on the time of year and what fish you want to target. But I can't thank Sparkus enough. That is some serious generosity. So that's awesome, bud. Really appreciate that. So stay tuned to that. That'll be Thursday. Friday, we get a bit of a rest. And then, no, I'm kidding. Then we're done for the week. But it's going to be a busy week, and there's a lot of great things that are happening. And I want you guys to stay tuned. Birthday announcements, of course, Sean Ponte. And I'm hoping I've got that name right. If not, Sean P. Sean P. How you doing, Sean P? Last Friday was his birthday. He can now fish all by himself, and he's not afraid of the boogeyman. This is what I'm told. If it has been written, it must be so. That was last Friday, so happy birthday to Sean. Devin Cox, his birthday is tomorrow, and he wanted me to mention his YouTube channel. And I think Steve, if he's here, he's going to post that up. And I just want to draw a little bit of attention to his new YouTube channel. He's been a long-time provincial ambassador from the province of Manitoba for us. Himself and the entire Cox family has done a fantastic job promoting angling in that province. And I'm telling you, there's some incredible angling opportunities in the province of Manitoba. And I'm sure all of you already know that. Devin's doing a great job promoting it through his new YouTube channel. And it's called Goals Fishing Outdoors. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic. There it is there. That's the YouTube channel. Thanks so much, Steve, for posting that up. If you could, guys, I know there's 60 of you watching right now. After this episode of CFN Live, if you could go over to his YouTube channel and just press the subscribe button, it'd mean a lot. And as I said, it would pump his tires a little bit for being a dedicated provincial ambassador to CFN as long as he has. But tomorrow, we also want to wish him. He's 11-teen, apparently. In fact, Margaret Garnier is also 11-teen tomorrow. Happy birthday to you. I would say on the eve of your birthday, Margaret, she's going to be 11-teen. And so is Mickey Trudeau. Mickey Trudeau is going to be 11-teen tomorrow as well. So CFN wants to wish her a very happy birthday. And I will say that is it for announcements. That's watching from Yorktown, Virginia. That is fantastic. Cool. It's very, very cool to get some new viewers that come in. Charles is in the house. How you doing? Alicia, congratulations on that incredible new PB. I believe it was a channel cat. It certainly looked like a channel cat. I smell. Yeah, buddy. How you doing? This is fantastic. We got a bunch of you with us. So what I'm going to do right now, we're going to bring Jim in. But before we do, I am going to play a video that speaks to, I would say, the old guard. The guys who have been around for a long time and have seen this industry evolve. But we also have to, in order to know where we're going, we have to know where we've come from. And Jim McLAUGHLIN does it better. I don't think does it any better than anybody. But here's Randy again to sort of set the stage for our buddy Jim.
So let me tell you one term we had at the St. Lawrence back in the day. Rick Clunn won. This has been back in the early 90s. This was back before GPS. All he had was flashers on his unit. He ran his nitro out there in Lake Ontario, 50 miles away from the tournament takeoff. Got on a big flat, ripped a big spinnerbait across the flat, won the tournament with 45 pounds. The magic and the mystery of that tournament and just the energy behind it, I'll never forget it. As far as, Rick talking about fighting the waves and, and the bait selection and everything that goes with it. There wasn't any of this. Yeah, I ran out to Lake Ontario and I saw this giant school of smallmouth on my electronics. And then I dropped my AquaView camera down there to make sure they weren't drum and they were smallmouth bass. And then I just dropped my bait down there and caught them. To me, that is just like, I just can't tell you how backwards that is for the direction that we need to be headed in this sport.
So, Jim, how are you this evening?
I'm good.
Fantastic, my friend. It's always a pleasure to see you and have you on each and every Monday to, give us a little bit of education, teach us the right way from the wrong way. But first off, what did you think about that? First of all, do you remember that tournament?
Yeah, I wasn't there, but I do remember it. I remember everybody was shocked with Ricky Clunn. But, things have changed. And I think that I don't care what you do, everything progresses. Everything progresses, and it's a question of where you want to draw the line. We used to fish from the bank. Then we started fishing other ways. Then we had boats and rafts. Then we put motors on them. Then we got bigger. Then we got boats with bigger motors, bigger boats, faster boats. And so it's a question of where do you want to stop it? And it's the same with electronics. Like when he talked about the flashers and everything, when I fished in tournaments, and we used to, the Canadian Open was held on Lake Ontario back then. And that's what we used to do. You had a flasher at the front of the boat. There was no following a black line to the rock pile. And it's, you had to go back and find stuff. And I've talked to you about this before, about me lending maps to guys, and they say about, what is 3,200 for 7 minutes and a compass reading mean? That's, well, if you put the motor at 3,200 RPMs, and you went on that compass heading for 7 minutes, you would come close to the rock pile you were looking for if you started from marker B2 and went on that compass heading and things like that. But you don't have to do, you don't even have to go look for things now. You look on a map at home and you drive to them.
Yeah.
And it's just made the whole thing easier. I was surprised to hear Randy mention, I really like him too. I was surprised to hear him about the cameras, because like cameras have been around for like probably 20 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
And I was surprised, I remember having a camera a long time ago. Like, I've had several of them over the years, and it's never, I know a lot of guys, I don't know too many guys that use them to look for fish, but they'll definitely try to get an idea on size, which is hard to do. And they also like to make sure what they are.
Right. And I think, Randy talked about that, making sure that what they're actually targeting is smallmouth.
Yeah.
But as I said, we can criticize, we can maybe offer our same opinions, different opinions when it comes to what Randy said. But what I'd like to do is instead focus on how it was back in the day. You talked about fishing from shore. You talked about getting in rafts. All of a sudden now you've got yourself, I believe it was a 10 or 11 foot tenor, and you've got a 4.5 horse on the back.
Yep. We've seen lots of pictures. I showed it to you last week on the cover of Ontario Out of Doors. I don't know where it went here now, but that was the first.
So to think about that, as
Yep.
a bass egg. You're now in a bass tournament. You are fishing for money, and this is your vessel. So obviously you're not covering, a lot of water, right? You certainly probably don't have any electronics, other than just good vision and a good set. So what was it that you did to prepare for a tournament back in the day?
Same thing as I did after we started having all the electronics on the boat. I was a real looker. I was a believer that you could learn more in an hour from looking for an hour than you could for fishing for an hour. I believe that to this day. And if you go out and watch a lot of these guys that are fishing at the top end now, and you get pictures of them, you watch them, you see them idling around, even more so with electronics now. They just use the electronics to look.
Right.
And I used to do that too, but I did it with a flasher. And I would watch. And the nice thing about at the time, there was a period there where like electronics were not like they were there, but they were not as good as a flasher because it wasn't real time. Like, how many times have I joked about the squares?
Yeah.
I had my Humminbird 8,000 deep, and the squares were like an eighth of an inch square. And a rock pile would be, 3 squares, then 2 squares, then 1 square. Stuff like that. Now you look down at the fish, you see them swim over to your lure. It was the first time I saw that. It was amazing. You're standing there and you're just like, is this for real?
Yeah.
Like they talk about video games with a flasher, ice fishing. But man, I really don't know. Things haven't changed that much, just the tools that we use have. We just have better tools. So, should a carpenter still have to work with old garbage steel blades because now they can give him a blade on a saw that never gets dull or, doesn't get dull fast. It cuts forever. It cuts twice as fast. He's more efficient at what he does.
Yeah.
He's got a nail gun to put in nails. He's not bang, bang, but bang with a hammer all day. So, everything that we do is to make it, faster and easier and more productive. It's just, I think it's just the way human beings are. It's what we try to do,
And I think that's truly what it is, Jim. It's about efficiency. And I dug up some old facts here. You talk about how to read water. You've talked in great length, some of the things to look for when it was sunny out, you get to see those shoals, but then, all of a sudden the rain would start. You couldn't see that shoal as well. But you did speak a little bit about when fish finders came out. And do you know what the oldest fish finder in history is when it came out? What year it came out?
Like for fishing?
Yeah.
I had a Gladding South Bend flasher, and if I'm not mistaken, they preceded the original green box from Lowrance, I think. And mine was, I think it was called a Bassman, and it was in a black box. Now, the fact that it looked a lot like the green box, it may have been a knockoff, and I didn't know about the green ones at the time, because you got to remember back then, there was no internet. Anything you learned was out of a magazine.
Right.
That was the only course that you had, and what was in there was that it was that weekend guy with the with the checkered shirt, like they used to joke about it being a Kenora dinner jacket. You had to have a pipe, and you were in the boat with your fishing rod, and you were relaxing. And it's a complete different thing now. Like people talk about fishing being relaxing and everything. My God, when you watch those tournaments on the weekend, those guys fishing, nothing relaxing about that. It's a job, It's an absolute job. But when I go out the back here and I muck around now, that's relaxing. It's just like it's if I have a fish get off to the side when I'm trying to, like the other day I mentioned, I don't know whether you saw the post I did. I said the only thing I caught was a largemouth, and I went down, I threw in my little crappie bobber on top of the little rock pile. There's a couple of rocks there just off the shore in the back here, and I threw the crappie bobber on top of them, and it just hit the water, and this largemouth blew up, and it got wedged across its mouth. And when I pulled it up on the grass and I pulled on it, and it actually, you heard it pop. It was jammed across his mouth, the slip float, like he tried to eat it sideways, just like a spoon. It was funny. I had some guys comment on it on the weekend saying that Lee Livesey there and the other guys there were catching the fish on top water scoop type baits. A lot of them that they caught. And somebody went on and posted and said, maybe they should try a bobber. It worked for Big Jim on the weekend.
That's hilarious. Well,
Yeah,
I did some digging today, Jim, and I found out that the oldest known fish finder was developed in 1948, if you can believe it. And it was by and I'm going to say this wrong, Furuno brothers in Japan. And it's been around for years. That company's been around. You see it on a lot of big seagoing vessels.
Yep.
So it is certainly.
Yeah, Furuno, they're a well-known name. Yeah.
But this is what was really interesting about what the unit was designed to do. They designed the unit to detect air bubbles because the air bubbles would basically depict schooling fish. Unfortunately, there's been some good stories that were added to it. Because the oldest of the brothers got thrown overboard many times because a school of jellyfish would also be indicative of a school of fish and would give off the same interpretation. So he was not well liked for the first unit. But you start talking about paper graphs, and I know you and I have talked about it. The Ray Jefferson came out. You remember the Ray Jefferson? It came out, I believe it was Pennsylvania. Then the Impulse. Microtrek 6100 came out. It was another paper graph.
Oh, the X16?
Yeah. Vexlar came out with the 155. It was also a paper graph.
Yep.
But in 1959, I think you just talked about it, Lowrance came out with the Fish Low K car.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I also had one of those. It
was the first which displayed fish at depths. That was the first of its kind to display fish at depths. And then in 1975, Humminbird, of course, came out with the first waterproof depth sounder, and it was called the Super 60. And as I said, David Chong's going to go into great detail at the end of our segment today, talking about some of the newer units and where we're going to go in the future. But
yeah, there was another name in there, was Cytex.
Yeah, Cytex was another one that I saw.
Cytex was in there. Yeah, I'm trying to. The Zircom.
Yeah.
And I mean, Zircom was that was some guys. That was Jeff Zernov, I believe, from Minnesota, who used to work with the in-fishermen.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things, and a lot of that technology came from submarines.
You're right.
Sonar units from the submarines. Yeah, I've heard them talk about it several times, and it's it's electronics. I mean, look at our TV sets now. Remember the old days, all the tubes in the back. The guy would come with the big case and fix your TV. Hope he had the right tube, and he'd fix it. Now you don't even buy a new TV, or you don't even have a guy come fix it. It doesn't work. Send it to the recycler. You run down to wherever and you buy a new one.
Yeah,
and that's where electronics have gone.
And that brings me to my next point. So each year, obviously, a new unit would come out. How often were you updating the units when they first started to evolve in the tournament trail here in Canada?
Well, when I was actually fishing in tournaments, you would have new stuff every year.
Every year.
Yeah. Just like now. I mean, I put new stuff on the boat every year. It's all part of the deals I have. Yeah. I remember.
We're talking what, 35 years ago, Jim? Give or take?
A lot. Yeah, no, a long time ago. Yeah.
So every year, still back then, to what it is today, you are still getting the newest unit. So not much has changed from back then till now.
And see, back then I really understood them a lot more because I had more time. Like somebody asked me the other day, "Why don't you fish tournaments anymore?" And I looked at them like I just thought, my God, And he says, it was a friend of mine, and he asked me. He said to me, "What would you have to do to get back and fish tournaments now?" And I said, "Well, I'd have to figure out my knee, but I can really solve a lot of that sitting in the boat. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Something to lean on. I'm good." So I do that. It would probably take 1 to 2 years of daily use of modern electronics with somebody in the boat to teach you how to use it before you would be at home with it, because it is completely different. It's just not the same. It's completely different. It just, like you could look at it and say, well, electronics for fishing has grown up now, but it hasn't, because it's still evolving.
Yeah,
It's still evolving. It will evolve forever, just like everything else.
absolutely.
You remember the first? I found a phone in a box in the garage when we moved to this house, and it was the ones that they gave away in GM Pro Bass, and they were made by General Motors, and they were a big black bag, big black bag with a shoulder strap,
Yeah.
had a cord like a regular phone, like a curly cord. And the dial was in the phone though. The battery weighed like the bag probably weighed 20 pounds because of the battery. And if you made 3 or 4 phone calls, the battery was done. And like I found it in the garbage can out here, and when I went to the dump on Saturday, I threw it in the recycle. And I'm watching. They have a small bin for computers and electronics and whatever. I guess they sell the metals out of them. And I threw it in there, and there was a guy looking at it, and he's looking around like this, And I know he's thinking about taking it because he thinks this guy just threw out a perfectly good phone because it looks brand new still. It's still. I used it a couple of times. It cost me like $60 to make 2 phone calls. That were like at $60 like 100 years ago was a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Plus, when you rode in the boat was off to one side, whatever side that it was on. But no, it was just and it's like everything. It's changed. Look at our phones now. They got watches. I mean.
So to that point, and I think Jay asked a very good question, and it was very close to the question I was going to ask. Because we're seeing the evolving technology into the 3D scope, and some other units like Hummingbird's going to be coming out with very soon that is apparently even better than the live scope, but they're taking it to the next level. And you're seeing like Randy, and I don't know if there's others like Randy, but I'm sure there are, that are a little reluctant to see that kind of movement when it comes to the technology. Back in the day, when you guys had the green box and the paper charts, were there people at that time that were against some of the electronics that were coming into the tournament?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There was a lot, but they were not people that knew anything about competitive angling. They were people that used to go out, and then you slowly saw those people start getting them, and they were portable units in most cases. They'd have the suction cup on the back of the boat, and the suction cup would come off and get caught in the motor, and when we had fishing buddies, we would keep 60 portable transducers on the wall, because every Monday morning there'd be 10 guys come in to match it up. I've only got half the transducer. No, it's just another stage in the whole thing. But a lot of people just couldn't be bothered with it because they just wanted to go out in the boat, throw out the anchor, and go fishing. And I used to tell them, am I trying to make you buy this? If you want to go out and go anchor and throw your line over the side with a bobber this big, a red and white bobber, have at it.
Yeah.
Have at it,
And Rosie wants to know, what do you use now, Jim, when it comes to electronics? Is there a favorite
Hummingbird 7s.
Yeah.
With down scan, side scan on them. I mean, and I every once in a while I have to remind myself how to use it because I just don't. I'm not really on top of it.
So Mike, he personally, and he is old school, like many of us, probably like Randy. He looks at water, wears good polarized glasses, pays attention to subtle details such as breaks in the water, habitats, water flow, winds, sunlight, overcast, even where their birds are hanging out. It's how he likes to fish, but that's just him. It's gut instinct that gets him where he thinks the fish.
Like I told you, people used to see me out there looking, and they were curious because what I would do is put the boat in gear with the motor trimmed up about halfway, so it was under the surface, but just in gear. And I would have on the kill switch, I would attach like a 10 or 15 foot piece of heavy duty cord, so I could disengage the kill switch like at any time. And you use the electric motor, not under power. You just use the pedal to steer. And if you move the electric motor at the front, the head, it'll steer. You don't have to steer with the big motor. And I've been out there where I've literally realized it was like an hour and a half. I've just been idling, looking at the electronics, and also the the electric motor would have been in the water because the transducer was attached to it. Now they come with it right in the head. You know, I remember when we fished, we used to have to keep extra transducers and extra cables and, you know, like clamps and things because they would hit rocks and get broken and come off. Now they have it built right into the head. It's, you know, it's all changed. A lot of it for the better, a lot of it to avoid, you know, your transducer being wrapped up in the motor and then you break your big motor. I never had it happen. Think about the second time I ever used my gliding, the black box I told you about.
Yep.
About the second time I ever used it, that happened.
And they weren't, like, unfortunately, how they were mounted to the transoms back in the day, it was all plastic parts, not a lot of metal parts. They've certainly, the technology's improved immensely on how these transducers are fastened to boats. So that
and you used to put in 2 6-volt batteries. Remember the square batteries?
Oh yeah.
And then you'd leave them in and you'd forget about it for a week or two. You wouldn't use it, and you'd go back and those batteries would have leaked.
Yeah,
because batteries don't leak now like they used to back then. I mean, back then you left the battery for a week, it was leaking. You know, it's what you did.
I will have to say, Richard, you stole my last question, and to summarize everything that you've said, Jim, and it's been a fantastic walk down memory lane. But Richard, absolutely point on with this question. Would you say, and this is coming from someone with your vintage and your knowledge and the background that you have, would you say if you don't have money or a good sponsor, would you still be able to compete with these guys with these high-end electronics?
No.
Okay. Fair answer, and makes a lot of sense. And really, at the end of the day, you would concur with what Randy is saying, and there is a lot of merit to it. At the end of the day, how far do we want to take it? How far do we want to go when it comes to finding fish? I'm assuming Dave's probably going to come on later on, Jim, and talk about, maybe we haven't gone far enough. Maybe there's certain technological advancements that are still to come that he knows about, or maybe would like to see. But
I still think that the last avenue to go down for fish is sound. I believe that, somebody's going to crack that. There's got to be something there. But I mean, you look at the weekend. I watched the tournament on the weekend here, and a part of it when I was tying jigs, the end of last week and over the weekend. And a lot of these guys don't have all the live scope and all that stuff on their boat. A lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. There was guys fishing top water baits in really shallow water. There was, then there's guys out there, and you watch them. They're actively looking and throwing in a certain direction because they know there's fish over there. And this is it. Hey, it's like I said, where do you draw a line? Yeah. Do you tell us that we can't use any electronics? Do you tell us that we can't use braided line anymore because the fish don't like it because we catch too many fish? The hooks that come, how sharp they are now, how good the rods are, how much we've learned along the way. Like I remember when I started muskie fishing, you had a 4.5-foot rod that you could lift a cinder block with.
Yeah.
Now, you ask Jim Sarek, if I had to pick one rod, what should I pick it? He'll tell you a heavy 9.5-foot rod. So twice the length of what I started with in the Rideau River, and half the fish would get off because there was no give in the rod. Now, well, I wouldn't say half, but fish definitely got off. Mind you, we didn't have braided line. But I mean, there's so many other things out there. Where do you draw the line? Yeah. Where do you draw the line at electric motors?
Yeah.
If you didn't have an electric motor, you got to start the gas motor, move 50 feet, hope the wind's blowing the right direction. A couple of times in my life fishing in tournaments, you'd have like equipment failure, and like it was the end of the world. Like you were ready to have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Especially if you were in a position to collect some money. It's just a question of with what and where do you draw the line? This time it's electronics. Like I said, what's going to happen when somebody finds a 20-pound test line that you can't break? Or, a line that's 10-pound diameter that you can't break. You only need one fishing line. That's not fair. I really, it's confusing. The only good thing is that we don't keep fish the way we used to. That catch and release is such a huge part, like such a monster part of fishing.
Yeah.
And I believe, I would hope that it's growing. I haven't seen anything in the last couple of years to take that either way, the numbers. So I'll have to see what I can find. But yeah, catch and release is kind of the answer to a lot of the problems. If you don't take the fish home, there's lots there. And I'm really happy to see that there's more and more people respecting that. Like I heard you guys talking before we went on air about limits. Nobody needs to take home 100 perch.
No, and you know what, Jay and I are going to talk about that. That perhaps, if it's so darn supposedly easy to find fish and catch fish, then maybe we should start looking at changing the possession limits. Again, it's going to bring on a lot of criticism, I'm sure, from anglers. But if it's so apparently easy to catch fish now, then maybe we need to start restricting the amount of fish we're able to take home.
And if you're taking home 10 or 15 instead of 50 or 100, it'll get easier to catch the 10 or 15.
True.
And that's just common sense.
True. Speaking of common sense, Jim, the last thing I wanted to bring up, at the end of the day, you could basically create your boat into a submarine. It would have all kinds of sonar, noise detection. You could have the best braided line, best rods, reels, the best trolling motor. You could have 15-inch, screens, just done to the nines. Your boat absolutely done to the nines. But isn't there an argument to say you still have to get the fish to bite?
Yeah, that is there. That is there. Like, electronics to me to fish for lake trout is, if you're going to go out and vertically jig lake trout, you've got to have electronics. Yeah, you can be successful with no electronics. If you have a rough idea where you should be fishing and you go through the motion, you'll eventually get bit. And I've had days when I've been out and just played in an area that I knew the trout, that there was lots of them. No electronics, not standing at the front watching for them. And I've still caught some, but it also gets to the point where you spend an hour and a half and you don't get any, and then you wonder, is it just not happening today? You turn on the electronics, you move 100 yards back where you came from, you go, ooh, drop the jig down, reel it up fast as you can, and here comes that big black line up after it, And there's one case where it's almost impossible to really be 100% efficient. It's just, and that's just one example, and I'm sure there's lots of other people out there that think of a specific thing that they like to do fishing where electronics are, you just got to have them, like ice fishing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, you're right on top of the fish. It just makes it a lot easier. Like a guy said to me one day, it's a lot easier for an ice fisherman, the average guy, as an ice fisherman, to put a hurt on the fish in the ice than it is in open water. And I said, well, yeah, because if you catch one, you know where the rest are, right?
Yeah.
You're right back down that hole.
Absolutely.
Your boat doesn't drift 50 feet away. You haven't trolled, that type of stuff. You haven't moved further away from where the fish were. Makes it a lot easier to go back to the fish. And I think it's just, you have to take care of the resource, especially if you're going to start to give put more things in favor of the angler. Then you need to respect the resource more.
Yeah, great points, Jim. As always, buddy, really appreciate you coming on, and it was a great trip down memory lane with some of the electronics that you've used and thrown away, as well as that incredible cell phone that you needed a partner to carry. I shouldn't say that. You didn't need anybody to carry your bag. But
that's why I walk with a tilt to one side now. Too long.
Well, buddy,
we always joke about it, ever since the accident, ever since the cell phone. No.
Right on. Well, listen,
sounds good. Everybody be safe out there.
Amen. Absolutely, buddy. We'll talk real soon. And if you could do me a favor, I haven't seen Chong jump in here just yet. So if you could text him just to make sure he's online. I've already sent him the link. So hopefully we'll see him later on. Okay, bud.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much for doing this, eh?
I'll text as soon as I get off.
See you Thursday.
Be good.
Peace. Sean, I did see your question in regards to the deeper, and I do know that Jim has not used a deeper sonar. I have, and there are some advantages to it. One, of course, is its fairly inexpensive in comparison to a lot of other units. You're able to throw it out and actually target fish that you may not be close to, but you can cast to. So the deeper sonar ball has lots of advantages. Not to mention it does have a flasher mode on it as well, so it's great for ice fishing. So it does have some advantages. Is it as good as some of the other higher end units? I wouldn't say so, but it is effective and it does work. So hopefully that answers your question. But before we bring in Lawrence, here is his intro and another word from our buddy Randy.
It's not understanding and utilizing the technology that is difficult, even for old dudes like myself. It's affording the technology for everybody that is not independently wealthy is the point that I'm talking about. And that is something that you can't deny. It's not understanding the technology is difficult, it's affording the technology that's difficult, and that is what creates an unlevel playing field, and that is what is degrading our sport big time.
So, Lawrence, again, Randy is very passionate about where his stance is in regards to the new technology. But, I wanted to look at it from a different perspective. Someone that has a disability such as you do, and vision being kind of important when you're on the water, you've certainly shown us that it's not as important because, man, how you manage to cope is truly inspiring, and it inspires us on a regular basis when you talk about it and offer your videos. But in order for you to be safe, in order for you to have an enjoyable time on the water, and especially when you were in tournaments, you were a tournament angler at one point.
Yeah, I still do.
How much and how important was electronics in your world?
I want to walk back a little bit on this, Scotty, because I went through a bit of an evolution, right? Like everybody, I started fishing. I just wanted to catch a lot of fish. Then I wanted to catch big fish. And then I wanted to catch a lot of big fish. And then, and you do whatever it takes because you're on this mission. Well, I was, when I was putting myself through university, I hooked up with a father and son team out in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. I had a cabin out there. And every summer I would fish aboard their homemade wooden dory. It had a compass, it had a VHF radio, and it had a bunch of hand lines that we use with jigs. And that's all it had. It had a motor. It was a 30-foot boat made out of wood. They made it themselves. It had a car engine in it, a 350 V8. And it had a compass and a VHF radio. Would they have loved to have all the electronics? This is back in, in the 1980s, 1990s, early. Well, it ended in 92, but this was, right up until 92. They would have loved to have all the electronics, but they couldn't afford it. They made everything by hand. That's what they had. We would go out. Some days we would catch 3,000 pounds of cod. Some days we would catch, just not even enough to pay for the gas. But they did that. People did that on the East Coast for 500 years, and they never really put a dent into the fish population, right? They did it because you would hit them one day, and then you'd go back in the same general area, and you wouldn't never find them. The school would have moved, and you'd spend, you move around, and maybe you'd find them again, and maybe you wouldn't. And it was hit and miss. But the school always got away, and that's why it was a sustainable fishery. Then they changed things in the 1980s. They created the 200-mile limit. They licensed a whole bunch of huge offshore draggers, set them up with all the sonars and GPS and all the electronics. And these ships could just basically sit on the schools for weeks at a time and just vacuum them up, clean them, freeze them, all on the same ship and never stop 24 hours a day. And within 10 years, by 1992, the cod stock was completely pretty much wiped out. They stopped it. It still hasn't come back. So what if there's a way to be greedy and you can use technology to feed that greed, people will do it. There's no doubt about it. But, for us and for these people who had done it for generations, it was the end of a lifetime. It was the end of a tradition. It was the end of their culture, their society, their economy, the fabric of their communities. And it was crazy. It was so destructive. Now, what did I learn from that? I learned that, the electronics can be a good thing, but they can absolutely be a bad thing. But I also had this desire. I wanted to go back fishing more in my own boat. So I started fiddling around with the same technologies, the GPS and the talking sonars. And I got really caught up in this stuff like 20 years ago. And I was pushing at technology companies, Minn Kota and other companies to make this and try that. And, they were sponsoring me and I was sending them reports all the time. And this is before, they had any GPS or anything like that in the Minn Kotas. It was just a trolling motor. And I was using talking GPS, and I was saying, hey man, you should meld these two things together and create waypoints like I am. And I'm telling them how I'm doing. I'm writing articles about all that on my little plastic boat, and they're loving it. We're talking, and and my boat is like a giant web of electricity with batteries and wires running everywhere. It was crazy, that little porta boat. And then I said, well, I got lazy, and I said, how did those guys I fished with in Cape Breton, they never had anything like this. And quite often it was foggy and they couldn't see a thing, but they always got home. Why the hell can't I get home? Like it's just like I'm in a fog bank. I should be able to get home. And I just stopped using the electronics. And I just started going out my little plastic boat, the little electric motor. And, you can catch a lot of fish within a kilometer of where you start. You don't need to go more than a kilometer, really. So, you go out and you wander around and you listen and you pay attention to the smells and the sounds and the feels of the wind and the sun and the waves on the boat and all the noise coming from the shores. And you go home. And I do. I go out and I go home. And I don't really use electronics anymore. I just do it the way they've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. Now, I got a big boat. I got a Ranger. And it comes with electronics, the latest electronics every year when I, pick it up at the marina. And, but I thought, well, I should upgrade the electronics. And I realized I did it a couple of times and none of my tournament buddies ever were able to figure that stuff out. So I just get it with the basic electronics that it comes with. I don't upgrade any of it. These guys, all the different people I fish with, they maybe they're used to hummingbirds, they're not used to Lowrance or whatever. Like Jim says, it can take 2 years to figure this stuff out. So I don't bother. As long as we have a way to keep the boat off the rocks and to navigate back home, and if we get lost amongst some islands on a new lake, that's all we want. And if we can find a hump along the way, really, it's enough. It's enough if we're not fully utilizing this stuff. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm still fishing some tournaments, but we're also picking up some fish to eat. But more and more, I find now in my life, we find a bunch of fish. We find a school of fish. We catch a few. And, when you're fishing a tournament, they say never leave fish to find fish. When you're just fishing, you leave fish all the time.
Amen. Mike brings up a great point, and it's all about the ping. And, of course, anybody that's ever used a flasher in the wintertime, you understand there's a distinct noise. And there's some suggestion, and, I would say it has merit, that ping can be heard. And once, Chris, for instance, says he's caught more fish with it off than with it on. Is there any truth to that, or do you feel the
trolling
same?
Trolling motors, same thing. Like you see a lot of bass pros, they're going in the shallows. They turn that stuff all off. The ping, the sounders, the electric trolling motors. They get the old push pulls out, like they use on the bay boats or the back country boats in the Everglades. Just a 15-foot bendy pole. And they just push themselves around. It's quiet. It's stealth. They don't hear you coming, right? But it's like sight fishing. We're hunters. These are tournament people. They're hunting fish like we have for thousands and thousands of years. You hunt with your eyes and all your senses fully keen. And you see the fish. The fish see you. Think about these guys who, all these well-heeled gentlemen and ladies who fish with fly rods in the rivers. They're fully sight fishing for the most part, right? That's like the best sonar ever. They're using their eyes. They see the swirl of fish feeding on flies. They see the little rock where they're definitely holding a fish right behind it, or even they just see the fish. They just see the fish. So are people telling them, okay, you can't use, you can only use purple lures because it's not fair. You can only use lures that look like golf balls. No. People spend a fortune on flies to match the hatch. Absolutely fully representative of what the fish are feeding on. They carry thousands of these flies in their vests. I do this. I love fly fishing. And you cast right to the fish. But you're using a single hook, and quite often it's even a barbless hook. And it's a little 14, 16, 18 size hook, tiny, and you're catching, 15, 20 pound fish sometimes on these little tiny hooks. So there's method, and there's ways to balance the scales in favor, so that it stays balanced. It's not just lopsided.
Absolutely. In your documentary, What Lies Below, you do touch on it in regards to commercial fishing, and really a lot of these electronics have come from commercial fishing and have come down to the recreational side of things. There is an argument that would suggest that commercial fishing has been able to up its game. It's like commercial fishing on steroids, based on what electronics are able to offer a captain. Do you feel that our species of fish are endangered because of electronics, or do you think it just adds to the greed of the state of commercial fishing, more so on the saltwater side, not so much on the freshwater?
So I was fishing out of Sailfish Bay in Guatemala for a week. We were filming a TV show down there. And, when you go out looking for sailfish, there's no electronics. You just drive around, and some guy's up in the crow's nest, and they're just looking for a flock of birds, and that big feeding frenzy where the minnows are trapped up against the surface, and the sailfish are herding them from below, and the sharks are swimming around, and the marlin and the dolphins and the birds are feasting from above. And you look for that, and you say, okay, they're over there. And you can drive for hours and hours and hours before you finally find one of these feeding frenzies, because you can see 15 miles and then it's over the horizon. That's why they build these crow's nests, so they can see 20 miles. And then eventually you'll find one, and hopefully you'll find one. And then that's where you catch your sailfish, and you catch a lot of sailfish. But then we came back, and there was these big ships, like 150-foot ships tied up at this wharf, and there was 4 of them. And they said, Lawrence, those are the Australian tuna boats, and they fish together, and they use an airplane. And the plane will go out and spot the school of tuna, and then these 4 ships will go out and surround it with a gigantic net. And then they'll pinch the net, and they'll drag it back to Australia. And they'll keep them in a pen there, and they'll feed them for half a year or a year until they get them just perfect, to the right size and the right market. And then they'll harvest them and sell them. And it's that's just, Stephen Cook was talking about using these drones for carp anglers, to position their hooks. It's not quite the same thing. They're not searching carp with the drone. They're looking to put their hook in a spot where it's not just a big weed pile and the hook's going to get lost. It's, maybe a little sandy spot next to the weed pile, and the drone flies out with the hook, and then you trigger the release, and it drops your hook right there in that little sandy spot, and 5 feet of water, 10 feet of water. You're 100 feet out, 200 feet out from shore, and you wait. And you wait. You're not waiting with the drone. I mean, the drone has to come back. It's going to run out of power. But, they do that with little electric ships, toy ships too. They use it with a radio control ships. They used to do that as well. Not everyone can afford that level of technology. It's for the rich, and it's just fun thing to try. You don't have to have it. You don't have to.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'm going to take it to another extreme.
Story, you cut out there for a sec.
One of my favorite shows to watch is Deadliest Catch, and it's probably something that a lot of people haven't thought of when it comes to that style of commercial fishing. But let's face it, time on the water increases the chance of injury or death out on the Baltics, or the, I should know
Beaufort Sea, up there, the Beaufort Sea.
Thank you. So, would it be advantageous for some of these captains to have technology, which they don't have just yet, to be able to detect moving crab below and be able to determine what species of crab it is, so that they can spend less time on the water and therefore not endangering their crew? Is there an argument for that?
And yeah, absolutely. Because you look how much fuel these ships burn, right? The CO2 emissions, there's so much CO2 going into the climate because of ships. They have to drive so far now to find fish and search and search and search. So when they do, and they find a school, and then they keep going back to that school, or they have other vessels coming up and servicing them, pumping fuel in, pumping ice in, taking fish away. They have these support ships. But they will sit on that school in that region of the world, and it takes about 10 years, and they've pretty much wiped that fish stock down to depleted levels. It's not extinct, but it's depleted. It's no longer worth their time to hang around anymore because there's nothing really left to catch. And then they go and find another school in another corner of the earth. And there's basically 2 corners around the world, around the African coast and down towards the Antarctica, where you can still, where this type of fishing is still rewarding. And otherwise, the fishing fleet, there's way too many ships, way too few fish, and they just drive around burning up fuel looking for something. So if you could limit that, I mean, the quota is going to be the same, right? With Deadliest Catch, they get a quota. The quota doesn't move, whether they can fill the quota in 2 weeks or 2 months. That's their quota.
And that was exactly, Sean just put it up here. Wicked Tuna is another great show to watch as well. And of course, it limits you to 1 catch in some cases per day for a captain, and then they have to immediately go in and weigh it in and get it dressed and sold, and then they can head back out there.
In Canada, in Canada, they get one tuna tag a year.
Exactly.
And I talked to a captain, and he showed me his graph from the day before. He had two tuna tags to fill, his mates, on his 40-foot lobster boat, and he showed me the graph. He took a screen grab, and he said there's like 40 tuna down there. He drove out. He said it takes me an hour and a half to drive out. Takes me 30 minutes to rig up. Takes me an hour, half an hour to an hour to reel it in, and then it takes me an hour to get home. So I'm done in 4 hours for the day. He's caught his fish, and then he does it the next day, and then he's filled his license. He's finished in 2 days. There's a lot of tuna, but it's well regulated on the Canadian side, anyways. Less so on the American side.
So, part of what Randy says too, and I think you could probably speak to this the most appropriate out of all of us in that, just because of your disability. Randy talks about the magic of fishing, that there's, it furthers your passion when you have the ability to go out to a certain area, and the magic of that, the unknown, right? The unexpected. All of a sudden you think you're where you want to be, and then you hook into something that pulls that line out of your reel, bends your rod, and makes you sweat a little bit, maybe work a little bit to get that fish to the side. Does electronics, in your eyes, pardon the pun, electronics takes away from that magic?
No, because I only need to do that a couple times. Like I said, we'll spot a school of fish, and then we'll see, okay, there's 15 down there, and then we catch a couple, and okay, it's this type of fish, and they're roughly around this size. Let's move on. Because at some point, it's just about discovery and observing, like Big Jim is saying, just going out and looking around. And I interviewed this guy, Carl Safina. He runs the Safina Institute in the United States. It's one of the leading conservation organizations in the world. And this guy writes all sorts of books. He's an absolutely amazing writer and speaker. And he said, Lawrence, we all have to get to a level where we say, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
He said, that's really the question we have to ask ourselves. Do we need to catch them all? Do we need to fill our cooler? Like these head boats that head off the coast and you pay $50 to go fishing. Do you need to catch your limit and fill your cooler, your white bucket? Do you have to? It's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. You should get to a point in your fishing career where catching no fish is still a great day. Catching one fish is wonderful, but then you don't have to catch them all. It's not a numbers thing anymore. It's just, I caught a fish here. I'm going to go look over there. I wonder what's going over there or that side. Are the fish, are they still there? Are they moved on? And you just do your little circuit and you watch the birds and you enjoy the scenery and the fresh air and the relaxation, and you catch a fish here and one there, and you move and you try different things, and you just get a feel for the lake and the health of the lake. And maybe you bring one home for dinner, and that's enough.
And you know what? That truly is the passion. And I think for most of us that are watching, most of my CFN community would aspire to that exact same belief. And sometimes when it comes to the commercial aspect of it, and of course, we can go on and on about the critically acclaimed documentaries that are out there that everybody's watching right now. But could an argument be made that technology in the wrong hands is detrimental to our fisheries?
I was talking to John Anderson, Ottawa River muskie fishing, and I asked him, and I said, John, what do you think? And he's got side imaging on his boat now, and all the muskie guides have saw imaging, and they know where the fish live. And he was telling me about this lake in the States. It's a very shallow lake. It's got 10 holes where the muskie hang out. Everyone knows which muskie lives in which hole. And the boats launch in the morning, and they circuit the lake, and they stop at the 10 different holes, and then they make their way back. And those fish in those holes have nowhere else to go because the rest of the lake is too shallow. And they almost can't even swim from one hole to the other. It's so shallow. So they're really sitting ducks. And everyone knows where those holes are because it's all waypointed on their systems. And that really bothers John. And we talked about, the ability to drive down the river, and you see this fish and it's there again. Yeah, it's there behind this little point, and here's that one by that weed bed, and here's one by that stump, and there's that one over by the beaver dam, and you just move down the river on one side and up the other side, and you see all your friends, all your musky friends at their homes hanging out. And then you think, okay, I'm going to bring this client and I'm going to let him catch this one because he wants to get a PB, and I know I can get him a 2-inch bigger fish here. I'm not going to get him the 4-inch bigger fish. He'll have to come back next year to get the one an inch longer, But I said, I said, so if that's the case, I said, why not maybe, if it's not, a fish of a 10,000 cast like a muskie, maybe you don't need 3 treble hooks, with 9 points in total. Maybe you could do it with a single hook, like they do up in the north, right? Up in the Northwest Territories. There's so many fish. You don't need 9 treble hooks. You when you're in the Northwest Territories and the Yukon, you're fishing northern pike. It's one single barbless hook. That's all you get.
And really, at the end of the day, isn't it all about making sure that there's fish there for the future? That's the goal of all of this is, whether it be catch and release, whether it be barbless hooks, whether it be taking trebles off certain presentations and reducing the number of hooks to catch fish. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's about preserving our passion and preserving the fish of the future, then maybe we should start thinking about things like changing, the possession limits. Maybe we should start, pushing and promoting catch and release. Maybe it's not the technology's fault. Maybe it has nothing to do with technology.
I agree.
Maybe
you're exactly right. And that's where that article went wrong. That article was saying reel it back, take away all these technologies, the flashing lures, the scented baits, the live scopes, the cameras, the sonars. It all has to be eliminated. You have to take that out of the equation. That's never going to happen. For obvious reasons. Like I said, why spend a bunch of money on gas when you could just not have to and just catch your fish and then spend more time just relaxing? But what you can do is you can, like they have in so many other parts of the world, like if you go for any sort of billfish in most places in the South Atlantic, it's, any sort of tournament for billfish, it's a non-offset circle hook. Yeah. That's the only hook you're allowed to use. And it's now the same with tarpon. You can catch a tarpon. You're not allowed to bring it into the boat. There's all these new rules that have been evolved because you can find the fish, where they are, but let's tilt the balance so it's back in. The fish have a chance, and that you're not wiping them out. It's something people don't want. Anglers, they'll buy all that electronics, but they also don't want to wipe them out, so they'll use that single circle hook. Right? They don't mind. They don't mind because it's a trade-off.
Well, another argument could be made too for, let's face it, everybody's lives are getting busier, right? And when you only have a weekend, and let's face it, when it comes to filling up the boat, making sure all the travel arrangements are made, you only have a certain amount of time on the water. And, do we really want to spend it necessarily fishing points that don't have fish when we can rely on our electronics to put us where the fish are? To confirm what we believe is the right spot actually is, because we can literally see them on the graph and basically take full advantage of our time on the water. Some would have that argument that, we're just too darn busy. Electronics allows me to be more efficient as an angler.
Yeah. And then you bring your wife or your husband or your kids or your grandchildren, and you bring them out on the water. Instead of waiting 8 hours for someone to catch a fish by accident, you go catch a fish, and you say, okay, look, kids, these are where the crappie and the panfish live. Let's just practice here a bit. And they all catch one, and it's okay. Now you got that skunk off. You're feeling good. You're feeling confident. Let's move on now. Let's go get dinner. So then we're going to go over to this rock pile where we know there's quite often some walleye hanging around at this time of day. Let's go catch one or two. And then you see them coming in on the sonar, and you say, oh, that was a nice one. Oh, that one's too big, or that one, here comes one. And then drop down and you catch it, and you decide who's going to try first to catch it, right? And you take your turn, and then everyone catches one, and you keep one, not the big one, but the nice one that you're going to have for dinner that night. And then you get to go around and look at the beaver dam, and your fishing is done. Your fishing maybe is done with your family, and you get to do other stuff with your family and look at birds and eagles and beavers and all the rest of it, right? All the rest of it that's out there.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that I have always said, if we want to get kids into fishing, we have to get them on fish, because when you're 5 and 6 years old, you're not remembering that point. You're not remembering that dad parked the boat over top of a shoal, or, that beaver dam had any significance to the amount of fish that you were catching. None of that played into any of adopting the passion for fishing. It was because your bobber went under the water. You had to reel in something that was fighting you, and you held up, and everybody around you was oohing and ahhing. You had no idea what was going on other than, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, I'm getting instant gratification. I'm holding up a fish. Now we've got all the smartphones, so we're taking these keepsakes, and that is what builds passion. So if electronics can help us fulfill that, then I'm all for.
There's one thing, Scotty, and I would suggest the industry is learning this and has come a long way in the last 10 years since we started Bluefish Canada and started talking about this, is this whole idea of responsibility and ethical angling, that as elder anglers, as anglers who have been around a while, and we're nurturing these young people who are full of passion and desire to catch a lot of fish, right? To catch a lot of small fish, and then a big fish, and then a lot of big fish. And then we have to move them through that, because it's a normal evolution of growing up.
Yeah.
But we got to help people grow up, and we have to realize, okay, you've done all that now. Now you have to be a steward and a conservation-minded angler. So yeah, that's Big Mama. You don't catch Big Mama. You go over and wave at Big Mama. She lives behind that stump. Let's go check, make sure she's there. Oh yeah, there she is. But you're not. She's lived long enough to deserve not to be caught anymore.
Yeah.
And think that type of ethical behavior, right? It's not just like, okay, how many fish did we catch today, kids? Woohoo! Come on. It's time to grow.
And some are chiming in right now, and this is part and parcel to what we're doing with the discussion. And Steve says, I call BS. Electronics make folks money. They were not created to improve passion. Who spends the most wins the race, no different than any other sport. And you know what? To a certain degree, I agree, Steve. But depending on let's say hockey, for example, does your kid make it to the NHL because he's wearing $1,000 skates or a $500 stick? No, he's either got to have the ability, the heart, or the possibility of getting there because daddy has a little bit of money. Yes, but it doesn't necessarily mean the skates that he's wearing is what's going to get him to junior hockey or the NHL. So to a certain degree, I agree with what you're saying, Steve. It's not the be all and end all. And I think that's certainly something that we're not going to have to, we're not trying to push here. And of course, Dave Gillis, just as you just said, Lawrence, electronic also helps people find fish deeper. And, if we're talking about, ethical fishing, do we really want people targeting fish at deeper depths? Probably.
But at least
not.
we know how deep they are. And we
True.
say, okay, it's 32. No, that's too deep.
Yeah.
We got to come shallow and not just drop a line down there with feigned stupidity, right? Thinking, oh, I'm just going to fish on the bottom and not knowing how deep you're fishing. At least that, okay, that one's too deep. Okay, all these fish along here. And I've done this so many times as a walleye angler, left fish in tournaments because they're in 40, 50 feet. And you see them down there on the sonar, too deep, too deep, too deep, too deep. Move on. Got to try something different. got to try something different. You go into some shallow bay, you change the bait, all of a sudden, voila, 27-inch walleye that you never expected would be in here, but you had to try something different, right?
Yeah. And you're right, Alicia. Ability is everything. And, sometimes the argument can be made that, who's ever daddy is the richest is the one that, ends up winning the race. There's a lot of instances where that does happen, but I'd like to believe, maybe it's just me being the way I am and set in my ways. I'd like to believe that ability will overcome all.
A hammer does not make a man. A man takes a hammer and makes a house, right? It's not the hammer that does the building. It's the person holding the hammer. I'll tell you a little story. Back in 2008, 2009, after that big recession, right? And the walleye tournament series, the anglers that were sponsored were not getting checks anymore from the tackle companies that were sponsoring them. And but they still had to pay the entry fees and the hotel and the gas. So they were selling all their high-end fishing rods, right? Because the companies could pay them with fishing rods, but not with cash. So they would get the high-end fishing rods, sell it on eBay, and they were just using the cheapest fishing rods and doing just as fine. To them, like, they didn't care. A fishing rod's a fishing rod. If you know where the fish are and you know how to catch fish, it doesn't matter what fishing rod you're using really in the end. That's just a lot of, it's just nice to have these beautiful fishing rods. Who doesn't want to hold a beautiful fishing rod? But is it going to make you a better angler? Well, it's the person holding the rod that catches the fish, not the rod.
Great point. Great way to end your segment too. As always, you're inspiring and you further our passion each and every time you come on here, Lawrence, and we're so thankful that you do. Thanks for spending some time with us, giving us a little bit of insight, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday, my friend.
Thanks for having me on the show, you guys.
Take care, dude. So, great perspective. Lawrence certainly broke it down in great ways. And as I said, guys, some people have different opinions on this topic. And that was the whole idea. As it did with our legacy group, it created discussion. Not all of us are going to agree, but it's nice to, hear arguments because, sometimes there's times you don't think how somebody else is thinking. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? Never even thought about it like that. So I really do appreciate, you guys bringing your opinions to the forefront and posting them in the comments. And feel free, never be afraid to post how you feel, because the one thing that we can never do is tell a person how to feel. We're going to bring on Jason BARNUCZ, who's going to give us a lot of insight when it comes to how technology is actually helping us learn more about fish, not necessarily catch them. So I'm just going to introduce this segment with this, which doesn't necessarily speak to what he's going to talk about, but it is something that I want people to consider when it comes to losing the magic. Here's Randy again.
Is when we get to the point in the sport where you lose the magic and the mystery of fishing, that degrades what the sport gives back to us. Bass fishing, being out in nature, being in the environment, being in the natural world, there is a healing aspect to that you can't deny. Once you get to the point where you take that magic and mystery and the primal energy out of and the unknowns out of bass fishing, and you drop a dang camera over the side of the boat and you see how many smallmouth bass are swimming down there before you throw a bait in there, you have it's an insult to the sport of bass fishing. It's an insult to what we're doing out here and what we're trying to do.
Well, Jay, it's an interesting segue into your segment. And of course, you've been texting me behind the scenes because it is certainly something that I never even thought of, but telemetry is a great aspect to how we learn more about fish and fish movement. So it's something that I didn't even think of, and I'm so glad you brought up. But before we get to that point,
yeah,
you represent the average angler. You represent one of us, a weekend warrior.
Yep.
How important is electronics in your journey?
So the only thing that's unique about me is because of my job, I use electronics a lot, especially for things like navigation and stuff. So you can plop a new electronic in front of me, like a Garmin or a Lowrance or a Humminbird, and I could run them pretty quick, and I need to use those for my work, like for navigation, safety, that kind of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, I use electronics. Like I'm still like a 2D guy. I have an old side scan unit on my boat, but I don't always use it. I'm a pretty instinctive angler. I rely on what's up here a lot. I think the electronics are just part of the puzzle. And I think like listening to all the discussion tonight and reading the comments, I really believe that we're just too caught up in the what I want to say, in the glamour of it all. Like, you know, we love talking about bass pros, walleye pros, and what they're doing and things. But in the end, you know, that's a fantasy. That's a fantasy. Like, I would love to, you know, fish competitively. Like, you know, I've been dreaming about that since I was a kid, but I don't have the time for that or the money for that. You know, it's not going to happen. It's like, you know, you could be a 46-year-old overweight middle-aged guy and love NHL hockey, and I don't have a desire to play hockey, but I love watching hockey. I love baseball, right? Like, I think for a lot of us, we need to not get too infatuated with, we need these things to compete. The trouble is that fishing is a passionate sport that we're passionate about, and we put ourselves in those situations, and we think we all want to catch more fish. But like I've said this before, Scotty, for me, I get skunked a lot. Like, I know I share a lot of stuff on social media, but for every trip I go out, I probably have one mediocre or bad trip where I don't, you know, nothing worth taking a picture of. And I think, yeah, good point, Gord. It's sifting through all the hype. Be proud of the angler you are. Make yourself a better angler. Don't rely on electronics. Don't rely, like, take the information, do what you can with what you're able to, with what you have, and become the best angler you can be. Don't worry about what someone else is doing, but be open-minded, be willing to learn. Because once you stop learning, that's when, well, I wouldn't fish anymore. If I wasn't learning, I wouldn't fish. I spent 2 weekends hiking in the bush. I learned a ton this weekend, and I can't wait to try it again in the next few days. Some of the stuff that I learned, to see if what I learned is true, like where fish were located. I fished some new water this weekend, you know, and so whether it's electronics or whether it's tackle or new gear or new places, we're all learning. Electronics can help you learn. It can shorten your learning curve, Scotty, if you know how to use it. But I've spent a lot of time on boats where people don't know how to use the electronics. You got to spend time doing it. Jim mentioned that. Lawrence mentioned that. I've seen a lot of the comments about that. You got to spend the time.
David mentions about Larry Nixon. When you stop learning, when you fish, there's no point fishing anymore. And you know what? We're nostalgic by nature, right? You know, we like old cars, we like old TV shows, old movies. You know, we're nostalgic by nature. So, you know, as much as it's great to have electronics to help us, do we, you know, on our average weekend warrior type outings, are we necessarily honed in on our electronics? I'm not a bass tournament angler, so no, absolutely not. I'm going to look at points. I'm going to look at different things. And as I said, I'm going to drive the boat there, and I'm going to confirm my beliefs on what I've learned, what I've listened to Jim, what I've listened to you, what I've listened to Lawrence, or anybody else that has taught us certain things to look for when we're out on the water. All that electronics for me is going to confirm is that you guys led me in the right direction and that there are fish there.
Agreed. And, you know, and the thing is, though, is that I'll touch on what Lawrence talked about commercial fishing. A lot of the technology we have is because of the science people to come up with better ways. And I put a link in the chat room about Sound Metrics. So Sound Metrics is one company that makes acoustic underwater cameras. Think basically and we'll talk about LiveScope for a minute, because that's like the new thing, right? Live scope is basically an ultrasound. If anyone's had an ultrasound down, that's what it is. You're sending out sound waves and you're getting images back there. Interpretation. That's being very blunt with the definition, but that's what it is. The sound metrics people use what's called a Didson camera. Now, I've been using a Didson camera. I don't use it all the time. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. In fact, there's only a couple in the province because of the price of them, and we have to like borrow it between different labs across the region. And but what a Didson camera does is, and I'm going to throw another link in the chat room, is it basically shows you fish, and you're going to look at these videos and be like, man, that is exactly what live scope is doing for us. And it's like, yeah, it is, but with the live scope, I don't need to have a giant bracket mounted to a cinder block. I don't need a laptop. I don't need a 5 kilowatt generator to run all my stuff. They've taken all that technology and trimmed it down to a unit you can fit in your boat. The difference with the sort of research acoustic stuff is we can actually take that and figure out targets. What are the size of those fish? How many targets are in the screen? So when the camera is recording, all those pings that are coming back, see on a recreational unit, whether it's side scan, 2D, down scan, live scope, all that data that you see on your screen, it's tossed out the window. It's gone. What we do on the back end is we take these acoustic cameras, and that data is then downloaded to your laptop as files. And then I can interpret that data. I can do analysis on those files and look at how many fish are actually in that screen, how many targets are there, what species are there. I can tell that by different, we can use air bladders and stuff to help tell fish species type. You know, so looking at things like, and we can use these cameras in places we can't go, Scotty, like what is the entrainment rate of fish into a dam? Like a dam is, you know, the turbines, right? Okay. Well, I can't send you into a turbine to figure out how many fish are coming through there, but I can put these cameras in there to record for me what is going on inside that dam to figure out how many fish are dying, right? So I think that now they've taken this Didson type hardware and software and put it into live scope, and it's made it, I'm going to say, affordable in quotes. The Didson camera is worth tens of thousands of dollars, whereas live scope is worth thousands of dollars. Now, side scan used to be worth thousands of dollars. Now I can go buy a Helix 7 for under $1,000, right? Great unit. And that technology is becoming available to us. Reels are the same way. You know, you take whatever reel company you want, Abu Garcia, Shimano, Daiwa, all have great reels. The technology that was in their high-end reels 4 or 5 years ago, in their $700, $800 reels, is a lot of times available now in their almost in their entry-level reels, right? And that's how the fishing industry works. But we all want better now. We want best now. But we don't need the best, because we can get by with what we got.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of us have been doing exactly that, getting by with what we have. But of course, you know, you've mentioned how we've learned so much about fish using electronics. I can't think of a day that I would go out in the water and feel safe without being able to know where I am in terms of the bottom.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, mine has a little bit of extra features, but my biggest concern is targeting fish that are too deep and making sure I don't run into a rock or an island.
Oh yeah. Like, you know, even some of the new technology, like look at Jason Christie won the Bass Elite on the Sabine River. Okay. How did Jason Christie win that tournament? Well, he won it on a spinnerbait in muddy water. Yeah. So I'll give a shout out to Gord Trask. That guy loves throwing a spinner. Actually, Gord Trask loves throwing a buzzbait. That guy is the buzzbait king of Southern Ontario, I'll tell you. So, you know, when I saw Jason Christie win an elite level event on a spinnerbait in muddy water, but how did he actually win that event? It's not just his instincts, not just the lure. His electronics helped him. How did his electronics help him? His graph is integrated into his motor now. He knew how much gas he was burning at every moment of the day because to get back in time to not be penalized. Like, we're not even talking about finding fish, right? We are looking at the integration now of your boat with the efficiency of your motor into how, Scotty, like, that's crazy.
Well,
But
and that's what David Chong's going to get into. He's going to give us a rundown of where we are with technology and perhaps where we might be going in his segment coming up. But yes, there's, as I said, guys, I'd love their comments. I'm doing my best to try and read through all these.
Yeah, there's been a couple comments about the hydro waves, and I've played around with hydro waves a little bit. So what's a hydro wave? A hydro wave is a unit that emits sound. And I've actually talked to the developers at a couple of classics over the years, Bassmaster classics. And hydro wave is so everything makes a sound. We just talked about even our sonar. So down imaging, side imaging, live scope, forward facing, all functions of sound. And then that sound comes back and is interpreted. Hydro wave, what they do is they actually record the sound of bait fish. So shad, perch, they record the sound of bait fish, and they do this in tanks. Like, they do this in an aquaculture type of setting, and they have microphones under the water, and they record the sound of different bait fish under different scenarios. And then you then get basically a card, and you can play those sounds on your hydro wave, and the speaker mounts on your trolling motor. I actually have a micro hydro wave. You can buy like a small micro version that I've played around with for ice fishing. And when the bite is down, the bite is slow, I think it helps sometimes. But the only way you know if it helps is you have to watch your electronics and look at the fish behavior. Like you don't need front facing sonar to do fish behavior. You'll see more fish on your graph. You'll see more movement even on a traditional 2D, on your old school square sonar. You will see movement of fish in your area. But at the end of the day, Scotty, you need to find those fish, right? Forward-facing sonar will not find fish for you. It'll help you locate fish, and there's a difference. Finding, to me, is geographically finding them. You and I are going to go up to Rice Lake. We're going to go spring walleye fishing. Okay. And we're going to try and find some walleye. We have to break that lake down. Okay. We have to break it down to a fishable area. So live scope and forward facing sonar is great that once you're in an area to help dissect that area and locate fish in that area. But we still have to find fish. How are we going to do that? Well, we have Navionics, which is a great asset. But it's still up here. It's still listening to our colleagues in seminars and learning. You still got to rely on this to find fish.
You're 100% right, because as Attila has said, moon phases play into it. Water temperatures play into it. Time of year play into it.
Time of day, everything plays into it. Like, it's really a mental game. And you know what? Some of the best seminars that have been done out there, there's one on the Bass University channel from Gerald Swindle about positive mental attitude. Every angler, I don't care whether you are a competitive professional angler or you're just a 13-year-old kid who gets annoyed because he lost a big steelhead on the weekend, you should listen to Gerald Swindle's seminar on positive mental attitude. Because I truly believe that being positive, like when I'm struggling to catch a fish, it's a bit of a slow day. I really try and focus on every cast that I'm making, but not like in an angry, obsessed way. Like, all right, here we go. We're going to make this one work. Okay, I'm going to throw that this weekend. I'm going to throw that spinner by that rock. And I'm like, okay. And that I saw something happen, right? And I'm going to throw in there again. Like, it's all that positive mental attitude. If you don't have a positive mental attitude, you're not going to catch fish. Oh yeah, see there. And staring at empty sonar, that goes back to Jim's shirt. What's Jim's shirt say again?
Yeah. Stop doing what's not working.
Man, he's going to send me a royalty. He's going to charge me a royalty for using that all the time.
Absolutely. But it's so true. And as
Yeah.
Bill mentioned, 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water these days.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. So it's not necessarily the electronics that are going to help you. It's listening to, yourself, Jim, Dave Chong will be coming up here later, and everybody that's followed these guys. We have taken in a wealth of information that it has been provided to us from an incredible community of anglers that since, back in the day when I was watching Babe Winkleman to the Linders, to all these, forefathers who have set the stage and implanted the know-how. And some of us know a lot more than others, but if you could put a few of the variables together, a few of the pieces of the puzzle together, electronics can sometimes finish the whole thing for you.
It's another tool. It's a tool that I think electronics are an essential tool for fishing. They are very helpful, especially if you're in a boat. Navigation, the mapping, and then you have sort of this ranking. You got your 2D sonar, which gives you your depth, and you can tell bottom type with 2D if it's color. So you got black and white, then you got color. Let's go through the spectrum, right? Then you got down scan, then you have side scan, and then now you're getting into forward facing sonar, right? So you have this whole suite. Like right now, and I want to say Lowrance came out with these with their X16s. That was what some of the first color units that came out, where you could actually see the difference in hardness. But the thing is, though, is that you have to be able to interpret what you're seeing. It is not a video of the bottom. And cameras are great too, but the water is not always crystal clear. You and I have a lot of friends who work in the media business, in the outdoor media business. Nothing is more painful than underwater filming, because it's usually you need gin clear water for good imagery, and that doesn't happen very often. So it's up to us to interpret what you're seeing. And even on a side scan, trust me, when you look at the videos online and you look at the screenshots, they're showing you like the shipwreck with all the crappie hanging off the top and the brush pile with the big catfish. That's all like perfect. That's like taking me and like airbrushing me up and sticking me in a Speedo commercial, okay? When you take your side scan and you drive over that tree the first time, it looks like crap because you went over it sideways, and at the same time you probably turned your boat, so you smeared the image. Like, you need to interpret what you're seeing. Like, and I think a lot of people need to sit down and practice. If you're going to buy the electronics, great, but interpretation is so important. And so whether you're interpreting bottom type, you're interpreting what kind of weed that is, what kind of fish that is, you got to spend time doing it. Don't spend the money until you're confident you're willing to spend the time. Because I see a lot of people who spend the money but don't spend the time learning it. And then they get frustrated because they're judging themselves. They're not doing as well as Buddy down the road. But Buddy down the road is putting Facebook pictures up every day. Don't compare yourself to Buddy. Be happy with what you are.
Absolutely. And Sparkus said, yes, I didn't forget Red Fisher. I did remember Red Fisher, but if there's anything Red Fisher, no offense, God rest his soul, I didn't learn a lot from Red. What I did learn was that fishing was fun, because nobody had more fun fishing than Red Fisher. I shouldn't say that because a lot of us have. But Jeremy, This is a great point that you bring up. And this is what I try to do each and every time I go out, is keep a log, keep a diary, making sure that you're paying close attention to, wind direction, sunlight, wave action, time of year, this, that, and everything else. And if you start putting this together, and of course, a lot of them have done this. A lot of very successful anglers have done this. So it is a great advice. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and we try to do that. But keeping a log is so hard, and there are some online versions, but it's hard to do. But I think it's something that if you want to become a better angler, you need to. It is time on the water, and it's experience, whether it's with your electronics or your gear or just what you got up here. You got to get out and do it more. I can tell you, in the past 2 years, Scotty, my success rate has gotten better because of COVID-19. Why?
Interesting.
I'm fishing triple. I'm fishing triple what I was before COVID-19, easily.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. I've caught way more fish in the past 2 years than I did in 2 years prior, for sure.
Well, I will say your last outing with Trevor, and obviously the steelhead aside, it looked like a very successful outing, and you guys have done a fantastic job having us be able to live vicariously through the BARNUCZ family, and hopefully you'll be able to keep up the efforts with COVID, starting to sink its nails and teeth into us.
I know. Yeah, and well, for us down here, we're fortunate. Like living in Norfolk County, there's lots of cold water streams. Like for southwestern Ontario, it's the only county with cold water streams, as many as we have. Yeah. There are other cold water streams, but you got to go like further up north of us. I'm not saying north, like KW, Stratford area, but being a Lake Erie based watershed, we have some great cold water fisheries. But it takes time though. It's a lot of culvert hopping, a lot of checking the regs and looking for, this is no trespassing now. That's no trespassing over there. Landowners change, but we put the time in, and we put a lot of time in last year, Scotty, doing this because of lockdown. And so this year we're right back to where we started, and it's looking good. So, and there's still there's some areas you want to fish. There's way too many people around, man. And it's not even a COVID thing. I don't like fishing elbow to elbow. Trevor sees a pool full of trout. He wants to go there. And I'm like, I don't want to fish with 20 other guys, but we got some good plans coming up this week, and we're going to make the most of the next 3 to 4 weeks before we can get back out. I will say this, being a middle-aged guy and kind of doesn't get a lot of activity, 3 days of hiking in the bush is way different than 3 weeks of catfishing. Let me tell you, Scotty.
I can only imagine. And my lore, and anyway, I don't even want to talk about describing the biology of Scotty Martin, but it would be sore all around, all over.
But I'm going to give before I jump off here, I'm going to give a big shout out to Natural Sports in Kitchener. You know what? I knew I'd be doing lots of trout fishing when lockdown hit. I reached out to John Burkhart at Natural Sports. They have a huge selection of spinners. Inline Vibrix's, Meps, and the holy grail of spinners, the Panther Martins. And I caught almost all my fish this weekend on one bait. I might as well show you guys where to have it. I don't know.
While Jason's looking for that bait, I just want to remind you that Dave Chong's going to be coming up very shortly, and Braden is now with us, and he was going to be doing the giveaway from last week from Fit Lures. So stay tuned to that.
So it's basically a yellow teardrop number 4 with a silver blade Panther Martin. Caught browns, caught brook trout, caught steelhead, all in the same lure. In fact, almost all my fish came on one lure this weekend. So
incredible. Well, listen, buddy, I want to thank you because it was really you that started this topic. I saw it, posted it, saw the engagement and discussion that we had as a legacy group. But some of the videos and articles and links that you sent me really furthered this to what it's become. And it's been a great show so far. And I want to thank you, Bud, for making it.
Thanks, man. And, I'll just tell people, like, it's not because of my line of work. I'm just a student of the sport, right? I work as a biologist, but Scotty, I'm just a passionate angler like you are. And when I like to study the sport. And so when you shared that link, I had already been doing lots of thinking. You could tell I'd been doing lots of thinking about that. And that's why I shared the Randy Blockett video with you. So thanks to everybody. Great discussion tonight. And we'll see you next week. Oh, we have an anniversary to announce next week too. We'll talk about that next week. Okay.
Right on, buddy. Look forward to it. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Yeah. Right on. Well, really appreciate Jason coming on here and doing what he does. And we are now going to go to who I would think, at least this side of the border, is the guru when it comes to electronics. So he's going to tell us a lot about where we're at and where we might be going with electronics. But here's Randy with yet another bit of his rant, but a great intro into Dave's segment.
That we've gotten to the point where we just accept it, that this electronic technology that we're dealing with right now is part of the sport. But like I said, where does it end? Eventually tournament fishing becomes nothing more than a commercial venture where the technology advances to such a high level. There's no guesswork anymore. You simply have the technology to idle around all day long and find the fish, and you might as well just take a throw net down there and throw it over the top of them, because that's what it basically amounts to.
David, evening.
Scotty.
Great to see you again, my friend.
Oh, same here as always. Thank you for having me.
It's a very vibrant and as I said, it has spawned a lot of comments, a lot of great comments, a lot of forethought. But I couldn't think, and I thank you so much for joining us tonight. I can't think of anybody that would best describe where we are at in regards to electronics and what there is out there to offer us. And of course, there's all kinds of great stuff. Garmin's got the live scope. Hummingbird's going to be coming out with a new feature that everybody's touting. It's going to exceed the live scope. I don't know. We'll wait and see. But first, give us your thoughts on where do you see it from where we are now to where we might be in, say, 3 to 5 years?
Ooh, wow. That's kind of a loaded question. And, hi to everybody out there. I see everybody's, saying hi, and it's great to see lots of familiar names there. But electronics these days, it's mind-boggling. Like, I still remember when Garmin first came out with the original Panoptics, and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, how much better does it get than that? And then I think it was within 2 years of them releasing that, then they come with a Panoptics live scope. And I'm going, I have honestly, I do not know. I guess what I'd say is whatever your imagination, can come up with is where they might go. I know there's rumors of a 3D live type of sonar coming. When it'll be here, I'm really interested to see what Hummingbird's going to do with their new. It's like an arms race out there with Garmin, Lowrance, and Hummingbird, right?
So and that's a great point that you bring up. It's almost like an arms race. You're 100% right. And as Jim was on here earlier, even though something new, it may have been very small, a new unit was put on the boat, even back in his day, in tournament fishing. And it's the same now. Not much has changed. Everybody's going to the newest unit, the newest technology, the newest advancement. Do you embrace that, or are you much like Randy?
I have really no choice but to embrace it, Scotty. Doing what I do and fishing the number of tournaments I do, if I don't embrace the electronics, then I'm not fishing to win. In most cases. Now, this is not always true. And I don't know how many of our watchers here follow. He's a fairly well-known angler down in the States there named John Cox.
Yeah.
And this guy is about as anti-technology as you can get. And if again, people who follow major tournaments down there know he just won a tournament on Smith Lake. With the the Tackle Warehouse Tour with the MLF, and on the last day, the top 10 were fishing live. I don't even think he turned on his electronics unit. Okay, and he was fishing against 9 other guys who are all using forward-facing sonar and all the top notch, but John still won. It just goes to show you it in some cases it makes a huge difference. And in other cases, skill is still going to overcome the technological advantages, And when you got anglers like John Cox, who's like, that guy is so intuitive, and makes decisions based on, gut feelings and stuff like that, and still winning tournaments, still top 10 all the time, And in fact, he's a madman. He's trying to fish the Elite Tour, the Bass Pro Tour, the Tackle Warehouse Tour. There's nobody down there who's doing more. But I like, part of me longs for the good old days, I still remember all growing up and when I got my first Eagle flasher, portable flasher, taking onto rental boats. That was, oh man, that was the cat's ass. That was the deal. Oh yeah. And then I graduated to an LCD unit, black and white. Oh my God, right? And then GPS, and the changes I have seen over my fishing career is just phenomenal. Like, just just incredible. And you know, even things like, I know I saw a lot of comments, and I know Jason touched on it, you know, hydro waves, things like that. I know there's a lot of debate over that. I mean, listen, I have a hydro wave in my boat. Okay. Can I tell you that it's made a difference in a tournament for you? No, I honestly cannot tell you that. But I've also have seen where we've turned on the hydro wave, and of course using live scope. Another one of these, we've watched fish swim to the boat when the hydro wave came on. These are by the way, these are walleye, Scotty, so you're gonna like this. These are actually walleye. We were walleye fishing, but we turned on the hydro wave and we actually watched the fish swim to the boat. Didn't really help us catch them any better, but at least they were there, and they were attracted by the sound. So you know, it kind of did its job. You know, at the end of the day, I know what Randy's saying, but you still have to catch the fish.
And that's exactly the point, that before we went live with the three guys, and sometimes our chats before we go live are more entertaining than the actual lives themselves. But I said that. I said, at the end of the day, you can have your $100,000 bass boat. You can have your $6,000 to $10,000 electronic, either at your console or on the front. You can have all these wondrous things, all the bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, don't you have to find a way to make the fish bite?
Correct. You still have to catch them. You know, it's but it does. You know what? It lessens the learning curve. It'll show you stuff about fish behavior that you would never ever learn any other way. And again, because I'm talking to you, I'm going to talk a walleye fishing right now. And we went walleye fishing through the ice this past winter. And we went on this lake, and a friend of mine who lived around there had quite a bit of success on there earlier in the week. And we went out there, and we were all marking fish. One of us caught one right away, a buddy of mine, Russ, and there was 5 of us all together. And then after that, we literally went probably about 2 hours, and we were marking fish constantly. But could we get them to bite? No. And it was very frustrating until one of my friends moved out deep, and he had a Panoptics unit, and he's running it, and he's going, oh my God, all these fish I'm marking suspended out here, but it won't bite. So I ran out to him, and he was using a lipless crankbait. And sure enough, he's 52 feet of water. All of a sudden, in 30 feet comes a mark, and he starts lifting his bait up, and it looks at it, and he starts shaking it, lifting, trying to get it to hit. And we watched the walleye turn and swim away. Okay.
So the argument that we made,
he was still on the screen,
right?
And I said, stop moving the bait. He stops moving the bait. We watched the same fish turn around, come back to his bait, and as soon as it got close to it, he started lifting it and shaking it, trying to kind of trigger a reaction bite, right? And again, as soon as he started moving it, the fish turned and swam away again. Never left the screen. Because again, we're using Panoptics, so we got such a wide cone on it, 135 degrees. And then I said, stop moving it. Stop. Sure enough, the fish turns around, comes back, and he goes I go, don't move it. Just hold it there. And he just held it there. The fish went around the bait once. We watch it, and then boom, it ate it. And after that, in the next couple hours, we caught 15 fish because we knew what they wanted. Now, if you were watching this fish on a traditional 2D sonar, you would have marked the fish. You would have tried to bring him up with your thing. Then all of a sudden, he would have disappeared from the screen. If you would have stopped, you would have got another mark. You would have never have known that was the same fish. You in your mind, you're probably, oh, here's another one. But because of the cone, we actually could see it was the same fish, and we could see how it was reacting to what we were doing, and we were able to make adjustments. There's no way we would have caught, we would have had much success that day if we didn't know that. It was incredible.
And really, I get the same out of using a flasher in the wintertime as you would probably a live scope. But, is there any truth to perhaps, something that I brought up to the group as well before we went live? Is Randy truly upset because this kind of advancement is making it unfair, or at least an unfair playing field, because certain things cost a lot more than certain other things? Or is it because some of us who are long in the tooth, been around a while, don't like learning new things, and perhaps maybe that's a part of it?
Maybe a little bit of both things. You know what? I know there's a lot of people out there who just don't want to take the time to learn this. Okay. Like I said, in my case, I really don't have a choice, but I also like technology, to a certain extent. But the crazy part is because I do, unfortunately, not this year because we didn't, but we do so many shows. We talk to so many people, and the number of people that used to come up to me and they see the Panoptix Live Scope and go, $2,000? Who would ever spend $2,000 for a transducer? That's just a transducer. We're not talking about a head unit or anything.
Yeah.
And so forth. And even perch fishing, the last little while on Simcoe, I'd be out there. I'd run into guys, I haven't seen in a while, whatever. Their boats are 10, 12, 15 years old and blah, 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 blah. You know what? They all have a Panoptix unit on it. They all have Live Scope on it. So in spite of, and if you look at different genres, we just came out of ice fishing. If you look at some of the face group pages, like Garmin ice fishing and stuff like that, the number of guys who buy Panoptix Live Scope for ice fishing, they don't do tournaments. They just want to catch fish, right? Same with the crappie anglers. It's not just tournament guys who are buying it. It's just regular guys who like to go fishing. But, I think everybody understands that nowadays life gets really, really busy. And your time on the water is so precious. And if you can have something that helps you figure out the fish, find them easier, quicker, so you can catch them, I think most people, the majority of people out there would do it to a certain level, within a certain reasonable cost, right?
And that's really what it's all about, right? Because at the end of the day, we're not going to tell everybody here your efficiency is going to go through the roof when you buy a Live Scope, because really that's not realistic to the community that joins me every Monday. Going out and buying, a good quality 2D sonar is more realistic for us. So are there different brands, different models, different aspects, side imaging, down imaging, all that kind of stuff? Yes, we can do that. And David Chong is by far, in my opinion, the leading expert when it comes to what unit suits your needs. But you're 100% right. Our lives are getting busy and time on the water is precious. And whatever can make it more efficient within your means is probably a good idea.
Yeah. Like when again, we just came out of ice fishing. We've had a show for ice fishing. But you know what? Just having the most basic flasher, your ice fishing, your efficiency goes through the roof compared to when you were just fishing blind, just sitting there hoping there's a fish down there. There's no, when it comes to ice fishing, there is no way I'm going on the ice without some kind of electronic. It doesn't have to be Live Scope, but I have to have some kind of electronics. Okay. I have to have some way of knowing, at least if I'm working my bait, there's something around down there that I'm working it for, and not just in the middle of nowhere where there's no fish jigging away.
100%. And Jim talked about that, probably about 5 or 6 episodes ago, where, he had forgotten to plug in and recharge his Vexilar. And he just take me back to the truck. I'm not even going to bother. And a lot of people would feel the same way. I feel the same. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Vexilar and that zoom function and all that. A deeper sonar ball, like Sean's talking about, it has advantages to anglers. It's inexpensive. It does work. There are some limitations to it, but going out blind, either you're going to be exhausted by drilling a ton of holes, or you're going to get lucky, or you're not going to get lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're 100% right.
I'd rather make my own luck than go out there hoping to be lucky. And if it's using electronics to do that, then that's what it is. Of course, our mapping has gone, compared to, I remember when we first got GPS units, and we didn't even have maps. You had coordinates on there. That's all it was on their units. Those are your first GPS units, right? And before that, LORAN units, right? LORAN C units, right? And now, you're getting actual map, shows you exactly where you are on the lake. And you know what? And I know some people say, oh, well, the Navionics app is not that accurate. Well, do you know what? It gives you a starting point in most cases. In some bodies of water is extremely accurate. In other bodies of water is not. But a lot of units these days, even simple ones like Garmin makes a Striker series, which are very inexpensive units. You can make your own maps with it.
That's
If you have the time to drive around the lake, you can make your own maps.
And is that
Have
a
it all
fairly
to yourself.
inexpensive unit, Dave? Is that a fairly inexpensive unit?
Yeah, I would say. Well, if you start with the Striker 4, $250-ish. That's where it starts. You know.
Not bad.
And then larger, like if you get into a 5-inch and a 7-inch, obviously you're probably getting up into that $500-$600 range, but still very inexpensive unit, and you can go out on a lake and make your. That's why if Navionics doesn't have your lake on its list, get a unit that you can make your own lake. You just have to put in the time to drive around, and then you're going to have your own personal map of your lake.
Absolutely. And, listen, you're still an active tournament angler. You still do tournaments. You're still very competitive in your fishing. And, obviously you do like your electronics. Do you agree that you would not be as successful an angler without keeping up with the technology when it comes to electronic?
Given that other people have access to it, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. If we had tournaments that they limited your electronics, and I can see this happening. I've seen talk about it a lot down the States actually, but having a tournaments actually where they ban electronics, period. And it'd be okay. I wouldn't want to have too many John Coxes in that, because you're going to be get toasted by him for sure. But without having in tournament fishing, if other guys have it and you don't have it, you're just not competitive. It's
so
just,
case in point to Randy, sorry, not to cut you off, but case in point to Randy, listen, he's in a field of 200 plus boats and he came 13th. That's not too bad for a guy who's using a 2D sonar. And if I'm not mistaken, if I could be so bold, Gussie, who just won on the St. Lawrence not too long ago, does he have live scope? Because I'm pretty sure he's still in the 2D sonar as well.
Yeah, he has 360. He's a Hummingbird guy, so he has 360. It's not quite live, but it's still great technology. It's it basically side imaging, but all around you rather than just out to the sides, right? Like 360 degrees. So I mean, it's still fairly new technology, and the way I kind of look at things is side imaging, down imaging, things like 360 is really great to help you find structure. And something like forward-facing sonar, like Live Scope and now Lowrance's new active target, it's better for actually finding fish.
Great, and that was going to bring me to my next question, and this is a question I get asked a lot, and I'm sure you do as well. If you're looking at a unit that doesn't, and of course, based on price point, do you choose the down imaging or do you choose the side imaging?
Well, I would, if I could only have one, down imaging or side imaging, well, I take side imaging. Like the down imaging it's an enhanced version of your 2D sonar, right? So it is more detailed, but I have 2D sonar. So I'd rather have that side imaging where I can see out the side. And I remember when, and at that time I actually was with Hummingbird, and when they first came out with side imaging, like again, it was everybody reacting like, oh my God, now, we used to come to a point, right? In the past, and with 2D sonar, we'd go all over to try to locate differences, maybe bigger boulders, whatever. And now all of a sudden you have side imaging, and rather than doing this, like this, you go, woo, and you marked it up. It just makes you way more efficient, makes your time on the water much more productive. So,
that's what electronics does. It doesn't matter if it's a GPS unit. It doesn't matter if it's a fish finder. It doesn't matter if it's LED lights inside the boat. It maximizes and makes your time out on the water efficiency. So really,
you still have to catch the fish.
You still have to catch the fish. And you know what? As we are busy and we need to make every moment count, I really do embrace technology, but I certainly do see, the opinions of others who suggest that perhaps when it comes to the tournament trail, there should be a cap on the amount or value on a boat. Do you aspire to that? Do you think that's an interesting concept?
It's interesting. Just like in the past, we used to have restricted horsepower series, right? But then there's but people always get around that somehow, right? They all of a sudden people are having souped up 60 horsepower engines, little mini bass boats, and now the guy who started in his 16-foot aluminum with a 25 horse in the back is still, even though there's a horsepower restriction, he's still at a deficit there, and at a disadvantage, I should say. But I don't think they could ever do that, just because the amount of money that's involved. The companies that are putting the money into research and developing this stuff, and the market. We've had this discussion amongst even friends of mine. We talked about it, and I go, I just can't see that ever really happening in a major circuit. Like, I do believe we're going to start seeing, somebody can start a tour and say, no side image, only 2D sonars only. Of course, again, can you enforce it? Yeah. Anytime you come out with rules, can you enforce it? Same with I know, like I said, when we used to have the restricted horsepower, there were lots of guys out there who were illegal motors.
$300 for a cowling. I remember back in the day. I mean, it didn't take much.
Exactly. So do we have to take everybody's boat out and check their motor and rate the horsepower on it and dyno it and everything?
Yeah, at the end of the day, listen, Dave, can you think of a sport where we've gone back or we've stepped back with technology? I think every sport I know of has always stepped forward. And really, at the end of the day, do we want fishing to be that sport that takes the step back? I would say no.
Yeah, I don't. It's like, let's have a hockey league where you can only use wooden sticks.
Right. 100% right. No, but it's true. Like even golf. Like, I don't know of a sport that has not embraced technology, has not somehow gone forward with the thought, of course, and sponsors, let's face it, make a lot of money and depend on their technology, making them a lot of money and eventually winning them trophies via the anglers and participants. So at the
only
end
fiberglass rods allowed. Come on.
Where does it end?
Exactly.
Listen, as Brandy said, where does it all end? I don't know that it does. But the one thing that has definitely been different in my eyes, we can have all the sonars we want, but the underwater cameras have definitely taken things to the next level. Do you see them implementing rules against those going forward?
No, I like I said, and I was reading Jeremy's comment about bringing back a canoe-only fishing tournament. Actually, Jeremy, there's a lot of kayak tournaments these days, and you would not believe how some of these guys have their boat decked out. There's guys who actually do have live scope on their kayaks. They have equipment-wise, power poles, shallow water anchors. There's another relatively new, technology has changed the way we fish, certain types of water. There's just everything is there just to, again, make it easier and to make anglers more efficient. How much you want to invest in it is everybody's own choice. You don't have to like it. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. But I don't think how you can stop everybody else from using it, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? Mike Console right now will be grinning from ear to ear because everybody who's talking about canoes and kayaks and non-motorized boats, it's called the CFN fish off. And it's hopefully starting May long weekend.
Yeah.
David,
And there's always going to be groups, and that's great. I love that stuff. In fact, even for myself, who my boat's not arriving till the end of May, who has a 21-foot skeeter coming. I'm getting a kayak so I can go fish smaller bodies of water, but I'm not gonna put live scope on it, but I'm still gonna have a nice electronics unit on it that has down imaging and of such. I see Sean's asking about a deeper sonar ball, and those are great for shore anglers. Absolutely, it's a great piece of technology for people who fish from shore. Garmin actually has a unit like that. I think there's a few companies that have units like that where you can cast out and it's linked up to your phone and you can actually check your depths out there. Because I remember when I used to only fish from shore, I used to always wonder, well, how really deep is it out there? Where do the weeds end out there? And the only way we found out was by casting out and getting snagged on them.
Absolutely. Now, before you go, I want to ask you one last question, because at the end of the day, I'm sure everybody would love to hear your take on it. And I know that you represent Garmin, so it's okay that it's a Garmin product. In terms of units, best bang for your buck, which one is it?
I would say the EchoMap, lineup. That's kind of the mid-range lineup from Garmin. You can get like a 7-inch unit for in that $600 to $700 price range, and the 900s, which often are on sale at the end of the year because they're bringing out the new models for next year, and they're usually in that $1,000 price range, which is really not expensive for an electronics unit anymore. But that unit is capable of everything, including handling a live scope transducer if you wanted to. So it can be as advanced as you want, or you can just use it for the side imaging, down imaging, and the 2D sonar. I would say that's the one that kind of offers you the most options at a reasonable price, because you can go as high as you want with it with the live scope, or you can just use it as it is, and it's, like I said, it's not overly expensive. Attila, power pole or spot lock? And Sparkus Fisher, you're absolutely right. You got to have both. In shallow water, you don't want to be using spot lock, and in deeper water, obviously, spot lock is. But wow, lots of great comments from people here. I'm having a hard time talking and reading at the same time. So
it's true. I have the same thing, and it's something I've been at this for 4 or 5 years now, and I've definitely gotten better at it by still having to engage our guests. But it's not hard when they're guys like yourself.
Yeah, every so much is changing out there. We got lithium batteries now.
Yeah.
We've got charging units like the PowerPole Charge, which I think Attila had brought up earlier. It's constantly evolving, and part of me does say, how does the average? I do feel for the average person. How do you keep up with this? How do you keep putting money? But that's first of all, if you own a boat, I hope you realize when you first bought it, that's what boat stands for, right? Break out another 1,000. So, so if somebody didn't explain that to you when you first bought your boat, maybe they should have. But for myself, I have to embrace it, and I do embrace it, and I actually enjoy learning what they can do. There's always new things. The way they link up to your trolling motors now. We have brushless trolling. You know what? We could carry this conversation on for probably a couple evenings, and not go back on everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I'm really glad that you're going to be able to. You've said that, and you're going to be able to come back and talk to us maybe about some of the advancements that you foresee coming, like some of the 3D live scope, what Hummingbird's going to be coming out with, and any new products that Garmin's going to be introducing to the industry. But before that, give us your prediction for 2021. What do you see yourself doing a lot of, COVID aside?
Well, I'm hoping, like I said, I hope I get out in the kayak, maybe not a lot, but a few times anyways. And I'm looking forward to, I do believe, in spite of how things are going right now with the restrictions and everything, I do believe most of our bass tournaments should go off pretty much like they did last year. Believe it or not, I told you this. I actually just got my shot this afternoon. So
Good for you.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't. My arm's not even sore anymore. It's I first felt it, but anyways, you know what? Once we get this under control and we can get back to some kind of normalcy, it'll be all good again. But I'm about all kinds of me. I'm about all kinds of fishing. I'm going to get down to the Toronto waterfront and fish for a bit of pike. When I grew up doing that. I grew up fishing in High Park and shore. So I don't forget where my roots are and where I came from. In spite of what I fish out of, I'm going to go join some buddies and do some salmon fishing out in the big boats. So a little bit of everything. Probably actually hit some steelhead in the next week or so too. So do a little bit of everything. Just get out fishing.
The common denominator to all of that is anglers, much like the fish, have to adapt. And if we don't adapt, we die. Some of us will revisit what we've done in the past. Like you said, getting back to your grassroots. Jason talks about it at great length about going to some of those backwater creeks and whatever you're talking about, getting out with your pals and doing some salmon fishing. So every lost opportunity, if you don't exercise, the right frame of mind and the right judgment, is a lost opportunity. And even though there isn't a lot of tournaments going on because of COVID, it opens up so many doors to do other angling and taking advantage of other opportunities.
100%. If for some reason the tournaments don't go, I'm still going to be out there fishing. I'm going to make it a point to, go out with people who I might not normally get to fish with in the tournament season. Just go fun fish. Maybe we'll get Attila out there. I know we talk a lot, but we don't get out fishing together very often. And maybe I'll get down and get out onto Lake St. Clair with Sparkus Fisher there, who, by the way, if you're looking for a great lake to fish on and you need a guide, contact him.
Absolutely. We're going to find out more about him on Thursday. We're going to be doing a TNT segment.
Cool.
And he's going to tell us all about it. But Dave, on behalf of all of us here at CFN, thanks so much for joining us and enlightening us when it comes to electronics, my friend.
Anytime, Scotty. You got my number. You just let me know. I'll be here.
Right on, buddy. You take care of yourself. All the best.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Awesome to have Dave. And last but not least, guys, stick around because we're going to find out who filled out and who tagged the right tackle store that they wanted to see Misfit Baits. And let me get the prize pack that Braden is sitting backstage looking to give out. There's the prize pack there. It's $100 worth of Misfit lures. And we're going to be giving that away momentarily, but let me introduce Braden. How you doing, Braden?
Good. How are you?
Good, buddy. Thanks so much for being patient. And thanks so much for giving us, our community, this great opportunity. Some great stuff that you're giving up there. Unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of people tagging the right tackle store, but to Sparkus, to Kevin, to Sean, to Robert, to Adele, Steve Shaw, Sean, Richard, Curtis, Tony, and Mike Gilchrist, you guys nailed it. You got it right. What have you been up to lately, my friend?
Lures and more lures.
Lures and more lures. I love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you?
Dude, this CFN, more CFN. One thing that obviously, as David just talked about, you might not be able to get out and do what we like to do, but doesn't necessarily mean that we can't do anything. And
sure.
One thing that CFN has allowed me the privilege of is to spread a whole bunch of information and knowledge via our community and all of our great guests. And of course, having someone like yourself come on and provide us some great tackle that we've got some people that are looking forward to win. Now, I'm going to ask you, how many times would you like me to shuffle the deck? Once, twice, 3 times?
Go 3.
3 times. So we're going to shuffle the deck 3 times. All right. And it's process of elimination. Last angler standing, you are going to win the Misfit Lure prize pack. Here we go with the first spin. Hopefully everybody can see that. You can see it, Braden?
Yeah.
It has to be authentic. If it's not authentic, is it going to be Adele out first? It looks that way. Adele, it looks like, I apologize, Adele. Let's, so we want to remove that. We didn't remove it. All right, so here's a free spin. Adele, you're still in the game. Here's a free spin. All right, so Richard, unfortunately, now I will push the right button. Remove Richard. All right, we're going to go again. Keep spinning. Last angler standing is going to win. Adele, I gave you a lifeboat, a huge lifeboat. Hopefully it doesn't come back and bite me in the arse. Sean Forche, unfortunately, my friend, it's not going to be you tonight. Keep spinning. Adele's still in the hunt, still alive. Not sure how that happened, Adele, but you know what? You're welcome. Ooh, Curtis Boyle right next door. Curtis is out. All right. Keep spinning the wheel. Let's see who it's going to be. Are you done school, Braden?
I have a spare this week, but I graduate this year.
Oh, fantastic. Sparkus, doesn't look like it's going to be you, my friend. Let's keep
Makes it easier
spinning.
to paint and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you do a lot of your own painting?
Yeah, I do it all.
Incredible, my friend. Incredible. Kevin, my apologies, my friend. It's not going to be you tonight. If it's Adele, I'm going to be in serious trouble. I can see
But
fruit,
he's really lucky.
rotten vegetables. I see a whole bunch of stuff being thrown at me. Well, you know what?
Oh,
This is probably the right thing. That Adele, I apologize. I did give you a lifeboat, Adele, but it's not going to be your night tonight. So we still have Tony in the house. Robert's here, Sean Earl, Steve Shaw, and Mike Gilchrist. Very deserved, I might say. All of these individuals are very deserved. Steve Shaw does not look like it's going to be you tonight. We'll remove you. All right, we've got 4 of them left. Who do you like, Braden?
probably I'd say Robert.
Robert? Okay, my money's on Tony, and only because Tony wins everything.
Really?
Yeah, so you've got Robert, I've got Tony. Let's see who it's going to be. Next one out is going to be Robert. Jeez. Now that happens to me from time to time, Braden. I'll say that, and it's the very next person that's removed. So I'm glad it happened to you and not me. All right, Sean, Mike, Tony. We're down to the final 3. Who's it going to be for the $100 prize pack from Misfit Lures, courtesy of our good buddy Braden Ta? Sean Earl, doesn't look like you. So we've got 2 left. The one who is chosen is not the winner. It's the last man standing. In this case, it's exactly that. Last man standing. Tony, Mike, it's on you. Let's spin the wheel and see who is the winner. Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Oh, my word. Is this going to be close? Holy crap. Wow. Incredible. Well, just as listen, man, and I'm telling you, you stick around here long enough, you'll get to know Tony. When it comes to winning prizes and doing giveaways, Tony wins everything. He is the hound dog of giveaways. Not only does he find them, but he finds a way to win them. So congratulations to you, Tony, for winning. Braden, thanks so much for doing this as well as the giveaway, showing up and sticking around. What do you see yourself doing in the future? What are you going to be busy doing? Painting some more?
I want to eventually do a store for Misfit Lures, like in the future. I don't know how much time.
Online? Are you talking an online store or an actual?
Well, I have an online one, like through my website.
Okay.
But I want to do like a store. Hopefully, once if it gets picking up and stuff more.
So currently, right now, are Misfit Lures sold in any store?
Yeah, so they're in Dave's store up in Porcupine, Get Fishing in Peterborough, and then Edmonton, Alberta. There's a guy named Jason. He has them in his like mystery box things, and then Post Box Tackle.
So there you go. Well, you're getting exposure, and you've got 2 lads that I can't think of a better place to start in Dave and Gord. So that is fantastic, and we're so happy for you. And again, on behalf of everybody here at CFN, Braden, thanks so much for doing this and
No
for providing
problem.
a giveaway to our CFN community. You
Of
stay
course.
classy, my friends. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
And we will be in touch at some
You
point
too,
again.
man.
Take care,
Okay.
bud. All the best.
You too.
Guys, what a great show. Fantastic, fantastic show. Big shout out, thank you to our 3 regular panel guests, Jim, Lawrence, and Jay, for offering us so much information and giving me the information and inspiration to do this topic, because we knew there was going to be a lot of opinions, and you guys offered up some fantastic ones. And again, at the end of the day, we may not all agree. We may not all see things the same way, but at the end of the day, we do it respectfully, as we have done tonight. And a big shout out to my legacy members who have been doing all the tagging and all the edits. You guys are phenomenal. But last but not least, our CFN community. You guys rock it. In a time where it's very negative, and you know what, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's been almost 2.5 hours. You guys are still sticking around. I can't thank you enough. It's because of you that this all happens. The work that goes into what we do, it's because of you. You know, we got Richard running around doing jerseys because of you. We've got Steve and Walter doing edits because of you. Terry's putting videos together because of you. We've got sponsors. We've got great, products that are being offered to our community because of you. It's because of you. The positivity and everything you bring to our community is the end result. So don't ever undervalue it. We appreciate every bit of it. Listen, have yourselves a great week. Stay safe. I love you all. All the best, and we'll see you on the flip side. Take care. Peace.